Welcome. It is great to have you join us today. This is going to be a wonderful opportunity for us to spotlight some of the historical documents, give information as to the underpinnings of how that our governmental system was designed to function and how that we as a people can continue that process of making sure that we keep it intact for our children and grandchildren. As a former United States government teacher, I am very alarmed at the lack of knowledge by so many as to why we have a government. Who are the people that make the government? What are the characteristics of a republic? And from whence does it get its powers? These are questions that are not only important, but are the basic information as how we keep people from floundering into chaos and anarchy. President John Adams said, "If men were angels, no government would be necessary. But since we're not angels, it is imperative that we formulate rules as to how we govern ourselves so that we may lead quiet and peaceable lives." President Thomas Jefferson said that if a nation expects to be ignorant and free, it expects what never was and never will be. Knowledge is a powerful instrument. There is an enormous gap between knowledge and wisdom. Wisdom is knowledge applied, or better still, it is looking at life from God's point of view. Secondly, we cannot afford any pretense of being apathetic. Not caring can lead to destruction. Indifference is a costly road to take. We are commanded in Holy Scripture to let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. God allowed for government. 613 laws were put in place to keep order in the nation of Israel. Judges were instituted to interpret the laws, and a system of priests and a hierarchy to keep order and allow for the governments of the people. The 10 Commandments were added, as noted in the Old Testament, as the official overall policy making for the entire Jewish people and a source of regulations and laws to keep men and women from doing irreparable harm to their neighbors and to themselves. The law was to highlight what was acceptable and unacceptable behavior. Today, it appears that because of our lack of knowledge, we are living in a time frame when people feel that they can lead their lives to do as they please or to impose upon others by force, if necessary, the rules that they wish to have in place are to have no laws at all. This program is designed to help educate us all as to how we can live in peace with one another. It is said that at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia in 1787, after the document had been hammered out, between the oftentimes competing forces, people who wanted a strong central government or those who wanted a confederation of states with a loose central government, those from the North and their interests, and those from the South. In other words, industrial states as opposed to more agricultural economies, the aristocrats, and the working classes. All of these different and oftentimes conflicting interests. A lady approached Delegate Benjamin Franklin from the great state of Pennsylvania. Since deliberations and the proceedings were done in secretive sessions and the public being excluded from the deliberations, she asked, "Mr. Franklin, what kind of government do we have?" To which the venerable statesman replied, "Madam, we have a republic if we can keep it." Our focus then will be on this program, how shall we keep it? America was birthed in freedom. From the earliest colonial times and before, the Founding Fathers declared their allegiance to a benevolent God for safekeeping and security, His acknowledgement in the affairs of men and as the source of all human rights was proclaimed in the public square and in the forums of government. Nowhere has the theme of God and country been more evident than what has been displayed in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Monuments and markers, statues and statutes, commons and cathedrals, with words etched in stone, display for all to see our nation's reliance and reverence for God and country, one and inseparable, woven into the well-being of a free people. This is what I said several years ago when we filmed in the nation's capital, and I believe that it is still true today. For example, when the Pilgrims came to this country, 102 people got in that tiny Mayflower. They had been at sea for 65 days, and Governor Winthrop said, when we landed, we bowed the knee and blessed the God of heaven for safe deliverance, and said, we're here for the glory of God and the advancement of the Christian religion. They came from Western Europe. They came seeking a place where they could get away from the state church, the Anglican church, and its mandates. They wanted freedom in their lives. They wanted to be free to worship God according to the dictates of their conscience. A cultural war is raging. How the conflict is resolved will have grave consequences. The opposing forces struggle over competing values, viewpoints, and ultimate victory. Very possibly, the casualties could include the death of the traditional family, the ability to govern ourselves. Political correctness reigns, and there is so much at stake. The urgency of the hour demands that truth be applied to error. Personal sacrifice will be required in this battle for the right. For those who love liberty, complacency is not an option. Enlisting in the struggles for the ideals that forge the greatness of America is imperative. This conflict is not just for the moment, it is a fight for our children's future. Just a year ago, approximately, I was privileged to travel to the nation's capital with Pastor Jim Scudder up at Quinton Road Baptist Church in Lake Erie, Illinois. He has a wonderful program. He's been a great friend, and I wanted to hear from him today.
Hi, I'm Jim Scudder Jr., host of In Grace Television. You can watch In Grace every week on TBN and many other stations, and also listen to our radio program, In Grace, on 500 stations. But I'm so thankful for my friend Andrew Phipps. We've had him on In Grace a number of times. We've traveled to Washington, D.C. together. He was so eloquent in speaking about the foundation of our country and how we are founded upon God, and our history is full of references to Jesus Christ, God, the Bible. It's actually inscribed all over our monuments. And there are very few people that know about that. And I don't know anyone personally that knows it any better than historian Andrew Phipps. He's a favorite of mine. Every time I'm with him, I learn more, and we're going to do more shows with him. But what a blessing he has been, and an encouragement, since he knows what our founding fathers said, and he knows that we are indeed a Christian nation. I cannot thank God enough for someone like Andrew Phipps being a friend of mine and a friend of In Grace's. And so it is with joy that I think about him and all that he's done for myself, my knowledge of our country, but also for America. Churches need to wake up. Christians need to know that we need to stand firm with the truth that we are a Christian nation, and that we have these freedoms that have been paid for by the blood of patriots. And it's all really based on people's desire for our nation to be free to worship as we choose. That freedom of religion is just such a precious thing, and I hope you appreciate it. So I just wanted to say how much I love Andrew Phipps, and I just wanted to say to you that we need to continue to pray for our great nation.
For those who would call us a secular nation and deny the influence of God and how that we got our rights from Him, the teachings of our society and our government rest so much on the teachings of the Bible, so said President Calvin Coolidge, who became president in 1923 upon the death of Warren Harding. Silent Cal, I've been privileged to visit his home up in Vermont. And that's just one quote. Let's take a look at what Harry Truman said. He said, "The fundamental basis of this nation's laws were given to Moses on the Mount. If we don't have a proper moral background, we will end up with a totalitarian state which does not believe in rights for anybody except the state." Harry Truman, the haberdasher and World War I captain from Missouri, who had great boldness and spoke candidly and quite frankly, and took on the issues of his time with great firmness. Harry Truman was a great leader for our nation at a time when we needed him. And I believe that if I were an attorney, I could argue quite forcibly in a court of law as to the backgrounds that would allow me to state emphatically that we are a Christian nation. For example, Patrick Henry said this: "It cannot be emphasized too strongly or too often that this great nation was founded by Christians, not on religion, but on the gospel of Jesus Christ. The Bible is worth all other books that have ever been printed." And before we go to the next quote, many of you remember his famous address that he gave March the 23rd, 1775, when he said, "Give me liberty or give me death." I recall that it was at the Bruton Parish Church. And Patrick Henry, who was so eloquent, he said that the sound of the cannons was already being heard. And he said that, "I believe that so much that our nation's liberties hinges on the rights that men ought to be free." And let's take a look at what President Thomas Jefferson said. He said, "Can the liberties of a nation be thought secure when we have removed their only firm basis, a conviction that these liberties are the gift of God? They are not to be violated, but with his wrath." Thomas Jefferson, who was probably one of the more erudite presidents at least in his generation. He was a tremendous writer. He did not consider himself to be an orator, but so much of the Declaration of Independence and his influence there, which is one of our great documents. It's our basis for our value system. It's really what we would refer to as organic law. Thomas Jefferson, who some would like to classify as maybe at least a deist, I'm not so sure about that. He had some wonderful quotes that I think might prove otherwise. For example, John F. Kennedy, back in the early 1960s, he said, "The rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God." The same president that had written the book Profiles in Courage and "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." The conservatism of President John F. Kennedy probably would not fit in today with those that revere his legacy. Let's take a look at the next one here. Our 40th president, the great communicator, Ronald Reagan, who was so eloquent in expressing the belief systems of our country, said this: "If we ever forget that we are one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under." May God help us that we remember from whence we came and why we are here. Without God, there could be no American form of government. So said Gerald R. Ford, our 38th president, who represented the great state of Michigan. He also went on to say, "Nor would there be an American way of life." Gerald Ford said, "Recognition of the supreme being is the first, the most basic expression of Americanism. Thus the founding fathers saw it, and thus with God's help, it will continue to be." You know, when you think about the great evidence, there's such a preponderance of evidence that proves conclusively that the influence of the Bible and God was central to the belief systems and to the laws that emanated from the Constitution as we go on further and look at the Bill of Rights in coming programs. For example, I believe Andrew Jackson said this. He said, "The Bible is the rock upon which our republic rests." Now, that may not go with current cultural norms, especially with the cancel culture crowd, but Andrew Jackson, the 7th president, Old Hickory, he made it emphatically clear his belief system in the Bible. John Adams went on to say this. He said, "The general principles upon which the fathers achieved independence were the general principles of Christianity. I will avow that I believe and now believe that those general principles of Christianity are as eternal and immutable as the existence and attributes of God." So said John Adams, who was one of the leading proponents for separation from the mother country and led the fight, he along with Sam Adams and others. They made it emphatically clear. They said, "We recognize no sovereign but God and no king but Jesus." I believe that the evidence that we have proven here will be the evidence that could be used anywhere to give validity to the fact that we have a Christian basis, and we are to advocate for this. We are to participate in the body politic and keep it safe at all costs. I think this program is going to give us such a forum to bring forth perhaps some information that will give not only lucid answers, but give validity to what we believe in our hearts to be right. These ideas are not temporary, nor are they contemporary. These ideas are etched in the hearts of our people, as evidenced in our documents, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, all point to the fact that we know that our rights come from God, that they do not come from man. They do not come from the generosity of the state, but as President John Kennedy said, they come from the hands of God. Friends, I hope that you will help us advertise this program. Let others know. We're hoping to get it on YouTube and any other forums that we can, media forums, where we can participate and advocate so that you and I will be a part of not allowing our freedoms to dissipate on our watch. We have children, grandchildren that are depending upon us to fight for the truth and fight for the right. I believe that it's incumbent upon us to do no less. We need to vigorously contend for the faith that was once delivered unto the saints. And this is Andrew Phipps. I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I'll be looking forward to being with you again at the next familiar time. Have a great day.
Phipps Faith, Family, and Freedom, brought to you by Blue Gate Restaurant and Bakery in Shipshewana, Heritage Funeral Care in Knightstown, Hillsdale Farm of Randolph County, Cardinal Exteriors LLC Roofing Specialists serving the Muncie area.